Hey, John.
It'll stop till it's.
Okay, thanks again to everyone for coming. There is no charge for this talk. It's free admission. It's promoted by a new friend named Stephanie Rutan, and she said that we should ask for love offerings that could go towards her efforts and to Casa for giving us the room. So if anybody wants to make a love offering, just drop her up there, and thank you very much. I am so appreciative of you guys showing up for this inaugural talk on soft landing, and you're really helping me. I hope it'll be the first of many that I end up giving on this, because the lesson I learned in Ishmael has just really affected me. There is a way out of this mess. We can save the world. It requires a critical mass of people who understand and want to do it. I published Soft Landing in September of 2020, and appropriately, here comes the guy I was just about to mention. Hey, hi guys. As we were talking about just a minute earlier, I spent 12 years writing the book, and during 10 of those years, I was a regular at Casa de Luz. And my good friend Wayo Longoria would always make a point of introducing me to people that I didn't know. We'd be sitting there having dinner or lunch, and he'd say, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Don. He's writing a Save the World book." And what a pleasure it is now for Wayo to be able to say, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Don. He's published a Save the World book. If you want to buy it, it's right over there." So, thank you, Wayo. Most of my promotional efforts have been here at Casa. I'm obviously lacking in being a really good promoter, one that goes out and sells 1 million books. I've sold about 150 of these, and 90% of my effort to sell them has been here at Casa. And I think it's probably a good plan, because over the last few months I've been diligently out promoting, and weather permitting, every Saturday and every Sunday, 4 or 5 hours, taking my little doggy out there and setting him right there where people have to walk by him, and he's so lovable. Lots of people stop and love up on him, and when they do, I say, "Yeah, I bring him to help me sell books. Can I tell you about it?" And so my little doggy's directly responsible for the sale of quite a few books. So during those months where I've been promoting Soft Landing, I've kind of honed in on a 2-minute spiel that I'm just so gratified that is so well accepted by people. It only takes 2 minutes to get them hooked. To say that Soft Landing is a Save the World book. It was inspired by a novel called Ishmael. It came out in 1992. The author was Daniel Quinn, and he entered it into a contest that Ted Turner was holding for the work of fiction judged to be the most influential to saving the planet, and he won a $500,000 first prize. And lots of people read the book, were affected by it like I was. It changed my life, to learn that there's a way out of this mess, that we can save the world, learn how things came to be this way. Just gave me such a huge sense of relief, and it does for a lot of people, I think, as well. So what Ishmael taught us was that the reason we have all these problems that we can't do anything about is because 10,000 years ago, when we were transitioning out of hunter-gathering to agriculture, somebody locked the food up. And as a result, we live in a worldwide culture today that's based upon the false myth that the world was made for man to conquer and rule, which fosters a false sense of separation. The reality is that we're a part of the world, a part of the community of life, and everything is connected. And the way to save the world and solve all our problems and get out of this mess is to transition back to a sane, nurturing culture that's based on that reality that everything is connected and we're a part of the world. And the way to do that is to create a critical mass of people who understand and want to shift the culture. And that's why I wrote Soft Landing, was to help contribute to that critical mass of people who want to shift the culture. So as I'm given that spiel, I mean, almost unfailingly, you know, the heads are bobbing and everybody's, you know, just, yeah, I get that. And it's so gratifying, you know. I do get occasional pushbacks, you know, 1 out of 10 or somewhere in that neighborhood don't go with the everything is connected stuff, or you know, just have a problem with it for whatever reason. But most people do. And I think as a matter of fact, tonight is the 30th anniversary of the publication of Ishmael. And I was invited to participate in some Zoom events that were going to mark the anniversary tonight. So appropriate that we're here talking about Ishmael on the 30th anniversary when so many other people are tonight. Often if I get the sense when I'm out promoting doing my weekend promotions, if I get the sense that, you know, somebody wants to get into it a little bit deeper, I'll continue on from the everything is connected to there is a measuring stick that I devised when I was writing Soft Landing to determine whether or not we have successfully transformed our culture. And the measuring stick that I devised was, have we provided basic needs for all people everywhere, no questions asked? Have we stopped cutting down our forests? And have we stopped polluting? And again, providing basic needs for all people everywhere, I don't know anybody else that's advocating that, you know, saying out loud, we need to provide basic needs for all people everywhere, no questions asked. But when I do, the pushback I get is negligible. You know, it's people are ready to hear it, and that just really gives me a lot of gratitude and a lot of hope that we're turning a corner here. Of course, that is a potentially very controversial subject, but I guess especially with the people, since I'm promoting the book at Casa de Luz, I've got a really good success rate in putting it out there. But besides those 3 things on the measuring stick, in order to transition from our present culture of separation to a sane, nurturing culture, we must take our government back from the corporations who have stolen it from us. And that's it's doable. In fact, it'd probably be easier than transforming the culture. You know, we've got senators that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders talk about it. There's a way to do it. We've got a little lever that can make it pretty easy. It just the requirement for getting it done is having enough people understand what's going on and demand that it be done. The way that corporations have stolen our government from us is that they have asserted that they are artificial people and entitled to the rights and protections under the Constitution and under the Bill of Rights. and which is crazy. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights was not written for artificial people, artificial entities like corporations who don't need breathable air, don't need drinkable water, can live forever, can amalgamate the wealth of millions and live forever and change their locations easily whenever they want to. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights was written for living, breathing people, and we abolished the insane concept of corporate personhood, and once again we can discriminate against corporations, which we currently are not allowed to do. Anyway, like shifting our culture, abolishing corporate personhood and taking our government back from the corporations just requires a critical mass of people who understand. The main focus of the talk tonight is going to be what a soft landing, post-soft landing world would look like. But before we get into that, I'd just like to check in with you guys and see how everybody feels about the concept of everything is connected versus our present culture that's based upon the false myth that the world was made for man to conquer and rule and fosters a false sense of separation. We all down with that?
Aye.
So when I was putting this talk together, it occurred to me, I told you a minute ago that tonight is the 30th anniversary of the publication of Ishmael. And it occurred to me that Daniel Quinn spent at least 3 books talking about, with the main thrust of every book being our present culture is based upon the false myth that the world was made for man to conquer and rule, which fosters a false sense of separation. All these different iterations of that, book after book after book, and this was as far as he got into it. I mean, he didn't get into, like we're going to tonight, what would a post-soft landing world look like. It occurred to me, and I'm going to tell you guys this right now, that those 30 years have really made a big difference in how people think and what people, the consciousness of people. First, meditation and yoga have gotten big. I mean, 30 years ago it was kind of rare to see somebody that was doing yoga. I mean, you took notice. Now, if they don't do yoga or meditate, that's more of a thing to take notice of than if they do. Emotional intelligence has come along, and basically just consciousness has been leveled up. We just people, because of the meditation, the yoga, the awareness of all these things, consciousness is raised from 30 years ago. I think undeniably so. Second reason, stratification of the rich and poor has gotten a lot more noticeable. 30 years ago, there were 2 billionaires named Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. We have 700 plus billionaires here today. And third, our sea levels are rising, our storms are getting stronger, our droughts are getting longer, fires are getting bigger, and our floods are coming more often, and people are aware that this existential crisis that we're facing from global warming and climate change is with us because of disconnection. And I think 30 years ago we didn't have that motivation. Today it's on people's minds. So I think that's I don't have to fight the battles that Daniel Quinn fought, in order to save the world, and get us out of this mess. All I have to do is spend 2 minutes telling them, that the reason that we have these problems today is because we took a wrong turn 10,000 years ago, and we need to transition back to a sane, nurturing culture that's based on the reality that everything is connected. That's it. No 3 books necessary. So I think that's very cool. First off, looking at what a sane, nurturing culture would look like, I'd like to give a nod to the Nordic countries. Just like the democracies that came after the United States used the U.S. Constitution as a model and as a inspiration for democracies that came after us. We can use the social democracies, the successful social democracies of these Nordic countries as a model and as a inspiration to implement social democracies elsewhere in the world. I'm talking about Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Iceland, and they're way ahead of the rest of the world in providing basic needs for their people. You can see from their high quality universal health care, their good schools, their daycare, their parental leave policies, their strong safety net for the sick and for the unemployed, their care for the aged, their social and economic and ecological awareness. They deserve a lot of credit for what they've been able to accomplish. And I'm sure you guys are aware of the annual poll that is taken for the happiest people in the world. What country do they live in? Every year it's those 5 countries up in the top 10, and usually one of them is on top, and it kind of interchanges. But I would love to see the United States follow in the footsteps of the Nordic countries, but what I came up with for soft landing is slightly different, and I think it's worthy of consideration. It's more basic, more focused on basic needs, more focused on that sense of connection, maybe a little bit more radical. The basic needs for all people everywhere, no questions asked, is that goes a little even farther than those Nordic countries go. To commit to stop cutting down our forests, to commit to stop polluting. I think we can do better even than those wonderful Nordic countries if we decided to go down that route. If we were able to successfully establish a critical mass of people who demanded it. I want to thank you guys again for being a guinea pig for this first inaugural talk. Let's look at the list of problems that I researched and wrote about in Chapter 6 of Soft Landing. Hunger, famine, starvation, poverty, homeless people, the lack of affordable health care, pollution of our air, land, and water, the loss of our rainforests and other precious timberlands, overpopulation, global warming and climate change, war, terrorism, the threat of nuclear war, rampant crime, overcrowded prisons, police brutality, governmental corruption, alcoholism and drug addiction, racism and sexism, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, suicide, depression, gun violence, mass shootings. Certainly our world contains plenty of positive things as well. Many of us, I know that this is true because I know everyone in this room, many of us are fortunate enough to know truth, beauty, and love through our own interactions with the world and through our fellow inhabitants. But the point I want to make is that whatever good exists in our world, whatever good we experience, it exists in spite of all the problems that we just listed. Very few of us are able to escape unscathed, either mentally, emotionally, or even physically, from the insanity represented by all of those problems. Now, with your permission, I would like to lead you all in a short, guided visualization. If you all are willing, would you get comfortable and close your eyes and relax? Imagine if we had all woken up this morning to a world where everyone knew that everything was connected. A world where nobody had to worry about their basic needs. A world where we no longer were polluting our air, land, and water, and where we were no longer cutting down our precious forests. Imagine when we woke up this morning, there was no war in Ukraine, Yemen, Iraq, or Afghanistan, or anywhere else in the world. Imagine if you had woken up this morning to a world where you knew that you and every member of your family and all of your neighbors and all of your friends and everyone else in the world knew themselves to be responsible members of the community of life. Imagine if you had woken up this morning to a world where all the problems we just listed were problems of the pre-soft landing world. Enjoy that for a minute, please. Thank you. We can do it. Creating a critical mass of people who understand how things came to be this way and want to transform our culture back to a sane, nurturing culture where we know that everything is connected can be achieved. Just look how far we've come in 30 years. Now let's go back and think again about how we felt when we woke up this morning to a world where everyone knew that everything was connected. A world where basic needs have been provided to every person on the planet with no questions asked. A world where we have stopped cutting down our forest, stopped destroying our precious ecosystems. A world where air, land, and water that's no longer being polluted by our carelessness. A world where we have taken our government back from the corporations who have stolen it from us. In such a world, would there still be problems? For instance, in such a world, would we still have overpopulation? The way I see this, the fix I see for overpopulation is that the only fix is for a universal understanding of the fact that our overpopulation is a serious problem and needs to be dealt with. And that would enable everybody to voluntarily limit their reproduction until we got it under control. I don't, you know, in a post-soft landing world, things like that are doable. In our world of today, you know, how are you gonna convince enough people? You know, you don't have a common ground, but you know, if you're recognized as doing the right thing, you know, from a standpoint, you've got a lot better chance of getting stuff like that done. What about war, terrorism, threat of nuclear war? Big cause of war is desperate, poor, hungry people. And we're not going to have that in a post-soft landing world. Another big cause of war is the defense contractors and the arms manufacturers can't make any money in a peacetime. And once we've abolished corporate personhood and taken our world back from the corporations who've stolen it from us, they won't have that influence anymore. I think, if we were able to transform our culture, we might be hanging our asses out a little bit, but we could say, okay, $800 billion defense budget, let's try zero. I mean, we could do it. You do that, and terrorism is not a problem. Threat of nuclear war, you can go first. You can give up your nuclear weapons first. There's what an insane world we've been living in for 70 years with the existence of these nuclear weapons. And the only thing stopping somebody from using it is the threat of mutual destruction. What about rampant crime? Being in a world where everybody knows that everything is connected, where people know themselves and their neighbors and everybody in the world to be responsible members of the community of life. The foot soldiers for the crime, at least, are going to want to be a part of that. They're not going to want to continue with the crime. Physical, emotional, sexual abuse may take a couple of generations, but in a post-soft landing world where everybody knows everything's connected, it won't be around. It'll be, the prevalence of stuff like that will be greatly diminished. I wrote about mass shootings in soft landing, and after researching and looking at all the information and reviewing all the mass shootings that have happened since the first big one that happened right over here in 1966. The thing that I was able to finally understand that you just have to figure out, because nobody really says it, is the reason we have mass shootings is because somebody has decided they wanted to end their life. And apparently they're so fucking mad at the world for giving them a world where they don't feel is worth living in, that they want to go out and show the world how mad they are and take a bunch of innocent lives with them. I mean, I don't know if anybody has a better understanding of what that's about, but that seems to be it to me. And that's not going to happen in a post-soft landing world. As a matter of fact, I was 12 years old when what's his name set up there on the tower, and I remember very well. I lived in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and I remember very well looking at headlines that big, on the newspaper, talking about what had happened, and just could not believe it. How could that happen? And hey, Rob, and it was quite a few years till another mass shooting, and then quite a few years till the one after that, and then came Columbine, and then they just kept coming and coming after that. I mean, it's nobody's surprised to hear about another mass shooting these days. What about governmental corruption? When we transition to a sane, nurturing culture, the purpose of government is going to be a lot more agreed upon than it is today. There's a lot of one side wants a government that takes care of people, and another side wants a government that doesn't charge them any taxes and doesn't do anything. And we'll have a good understanding of what government's about, and there'll be a lot more interest in it, and it'll be a lot more transparent, and a lot harder for governmental corruption to take place. Plus, we'll be living in a post-soft landing world where everybody knows that everything is connected, and there'll be a lot more motivation to do wrongdoing like that. Racism and sexism. those two things are here with us today because people don't have a capacity for self-reflection. If they did, they would be able to understand that racism and sexism is not something that you want to participate in. And since that's the cause of it, the likelihood that most people that are racist and sexist today are gonna die racist and sexist is probably pretty high. But their children are gonna be born into a world where everybody knows that everything is connected. So it's not gonna take more than a generation or two, and that those terrible problems are gonna be behind us as well. How would our economy function in a post-South Landing world? I believe that we can put capitalism right on top of basic needs for everyone. But capitalism is not going to be able to profit from desperate, poor people, and not going to be able to exploit them because they don't know how they're going to get their basic needs, because they're going to have their basic needs. And they're not going to be able to profit by raping our natural resources and cutting down our forests and turning our natural forests into toilet paper. I think an enlightened form of capitalism, that functions just like it does today, where you can profit by being an employee, a business owner, a stockholder, all the ways that you can profit today, but it's going to be a more enlightened form of capitalism. I did chapter 7 in the corporate rulers chapter. I did look at all of the business sectors. So let me go through some of those and talk about what would happen if we shifted the culture with some of those. Car companies. I guess y'all are familiar with the General Motors conspiracy, where back in 1920, General Motors was able to plow up all the streetcar rails and take away all the mass transit and make the developing nation more dependent upon the new oncoming automobiles. But we're going back the other way with that now. Driverless cars are right on the horizon, and a return to mass transit is coming, and car companies are not going to be selling as many cars sometime here in the near future. I heard you talking about that with your family business out in California. You guys see it coming as well. The oil companies, there's a lot of confusion about what is an oil company. Almost everybody that talks about energy lumps oil into all the energy companies, but really oil should stand on its own when you're talking about oil, because oil is all about transportation. It's all about putting that gasoline into an internal combustion engine. And the oil companies are on their dying days right now, because people are transitioning to all electric cars and more energy efficient cars. And I've been in oil and gas exploration since 1977, and I always thought the end of the oil business would come when we ran out of oil. But as a cool little shift in the way things turned out, the end of the oil business is coming because people don't want it anymore. The defense contractors and the arms manufacturers, there's going to be a lot of bankruptcies there, hopefully. I mean, we gotta cut that defense budget, and we gotta take away the ability of the arms manufacturers and the defense contractors to influence whether we're at war or at peace. Pharmaceutical companies, I called pharmaceutical companies the corporate equivalent of a sociopathic criminal in soft landing, and rightfully so. Probably there's very few pharmaceutical drugs being consumed by the people in this room, although I'm sure there is some. And you know, we do have a need for pharmaceutical companies, but the way that they operate today is just not beneficial to the culture. For instance, every pharmaceutical company is racing to find the cure to cancer, and they're guarding their information and their research carefully. What bullshit is that? You know, it should be demanded of the pharmaceutical companies that everything that they come up with should be shared with every other company, and who cares if some pharmaceutical company is not going to be able to be the zillionaire that discovers the cure for cancer. Let's make it happen 15 years earlier and save millions of lives in the process. It's crazy. Health insurance companies, that's the easiest one of all. I mean, if it hasn't happened already, they're going to receive the death penalty. Health insurance companies have no purpose whatsoever other than to extract a profit from our health industry and make things more complicated and more expensive, because getting the money out of the health insurance companies is more complicated than it would be if we had a single payer system that didn't extract a profit. That's just, I mean, that issue right there it just shows you the undue influence of corporations. The fact that they're still here when that's the reality. That's what they are. Media and broadcasting companies, somehow we have to find a way to get good, factual, true information in front of the voting population, and we don't have that today. There's a way to get it done, but we're a long ways from having that. I see media and broadcasting companies as thriving in a post-soft landing world, but they'll be providing us with good, factual, reliable information like they're not doing today. Agriculture and the food industry, I mean, that's we have I don't know what the exact percentage is, but I'm going to say 90% of the land that's planted in crops is planted in commodity crops that go to feed livestock, and it's terrible for the planet, and it doesn't feed the people, like I said earlier, it's the real fix is having people want to eat plants and limit their consumption of processed junk food and meat. The last business sector, banking and finance. I worked really hard on writing the piece on banking and finance, and I even wrote about the financial crisis. And what I wrote about on the financial crisis, I couldn't find anyplace else. It didn't exist in print. But what I came up with was that the reason that we had a financial crisis in the first place is because of the CEOs of all the companies that were involved in that fiasco that broke everything, they put all their companies in fragile positions for their own personal gains. And when it was all over with, not one of them was punished. Not one of them went to jail. And they walked away with their billions in profits, while the rest of the company and the rest of the country suffered. But the big thing I learned by researching this sector was that we have, for 1,000 years, been allowing banks to profit by creating money out of thin air. It's called fractional reserve. And there's three pillars to the monetary system. One is the fractional reserve. One is the participation of the central bank in helping to keep everything rolling. And the third is an agreement that we're going to take the money on faith. I mean, there's Richard Nixon ended the gold backing of the dollar. Ever since then, there's been, the only thing that the dollar is because we say it's a dollar, and our government requires that it be used as a legal tender. But among all those things, I really don't see a problem, except that we're allowing for-profit banks to profit by the creation of our money. People don't understand it. The process is you go in and you apply to get a loan to buy a house or to buy a car. You give them all your information, and you just hope they'll allow you to get the loan from them. And then they, if they say yes, they give you the money, and you go and buy your house or your car. And you're required by law to pay them back plus interest, or they can take your house or your car or whatever. But what people don't understand, they think, well, the reason the banks are such hard asses about being sure that I'm qualified is because they've worked so hard for this money. Well, bullshit, they didn't do a thing for this money. They created it. It did not exist until they gave you that loan. And when you pay that loan back, every cent that you pay them, including the principal, is profit to the bank. People don't understand that. And I don't have a single problem with our monetary system, except that we're allowing for-profit banks to profit by the creation of our money. Why not allow public banks to do that service and let the money go to fund the government? That's all on that. Didn't really end on a high note there, but it would be a really good time for us to achieve this cultural revolution. There's a industrial revolution coming. We're in the middle of it. A lot of other countries are farther along than we are. Jeremy Rifkin has written books about it, and it's coming. We're going to be living in a connected future where all of our things talk to each other, and everything is so much more automated. We share automobiles, driverless automobiles, on and on and on. And Jeremy Rifkin talks about it too. He says, the missing piece is the cultural shift back to a culture that's a sane, nurturing culture that's connected. Let me close by just reading something here. For the past 10,000 years, our culture has been ruled by rich and powerful individuals, with many of them acting behind the scenes through their daisy chain of their rich and powerful organizations. At any point in that 10,000 year period, these individuals could have come to the same conclusion set out in this book and decided to bring us all down for a nice, soft, 3-point landing. But that has never happened. That leaves the rest of us with only one option. We're going to have to go into the cockpit, rip the controls out of their hands, and bring this doomed culture down by ourselves. There's a very real possibility that this struggle for the controls may turn into quite a battle. One thing is for sure, though, we will need to see it through. We owe it to this beautiful planet and to the underprivileged among us and for the rest of the community of life that have been exploited and neglected for so long. Don't you feel a deep sense of responsibility to this beautiful little planet and to all of the diverse life forms, including our own? It's totally within our power to change this situation. First, we must assemble a critical mass of people who understand that everything is connected, and our present insane culture does not recognize this reality. Then, using our democratic process, we make changes using the voting booth. This is a call to intelligent people everywhere to examine the facts and choose to see the truth. This is a call to reasonable people everywhere to embrace the truth and replace our flawed and doomed culture before it crashes on its own. This is a call to responsible people everywhere to step up and do what we have to do to save this planet. Other than greed and selfishness, there is no reason for us to continue down this path that leads to our own destruction. Let's make it happen. Let's save the world. Thank you all. Anybody have any questions?
I've come across similar ideas and chased after a number of them with different groups and different areas. Zeitgeist movements, like one of the big ones, the Venus Project is another.
Yeah.
And there's other groups that are similar.
Yeah.
And that, we really need to take a different focus on everything. We really need to change the incentive programs for society in general. And money is probably one of the things that needs to go away. But then we get back to, here we are, discussing these sorts of matters tends to get people calling you a wealthy communist ideal. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that
Yeah, socialism's a curse word to the Republicans in the Congress.
It is a curse word, yeah. Sure. We should use different vocabulary so it doesn't.
Biosmart, thanks.
Evoke those same kind of stereotypes that we've pick up over time. Yet we still have
Thanks, Will.
a huge uphill battle, right? What are your thoughts on this transition, the transformation in that? Can it be done without just full out war scale?
Oh yeah, it all depends on what kind of critical mass we're able to assemble. The more people within, critical mass by definition means, enough people to implement change when those are people who remain opposed to it. So if we've got a really strong critical mass, especially one that includes a lot of wealthy and influential and powerful people, then it'll be a lot easier and a lot less messy. But that's the key. And nothing can be done until we achieve that critical mass. That's what I'm all about is
that like 10%?
Making people aware and making people want to shift the culture. And making people aware that the way to do it is to create a critical mass. If you guys are with me on what I've been advocating here tonight, then your job is to bring more people into the critical mass, your friends and your family and your acquaintances. That's the way we're going to save the world.
Do you collaborate with anybody else on this as group organization?
Thanks, Eric.
Common ground, thanks for building it, where it.
You're welcome. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks, Don.
I'm in the infant stages of this. You know, I published the book a year and a half ago, but it's been slow taking off. This is the first big talk I've given. All of my promotional efforts have been based here in Casa. Maybe a wealthy individual will see this video on YouTube and decide to fund me with enough money to bring in a little staff and take it to the next level, or who knows. Everything is connected. So connect with everybody, and pool your resources and get it done.
Are you using social media?
I was not on social media until I published Soft Landing, and then I got on Facebook, and I have not enjoyed being on Facebook. And I know people have been telling me, well, you need to be on Instagram, and I don't think I want to be on Instagram either. I'll do what I have to do. But I do have a website that doesn't get any
would be
traffic.
best on Twitter.
Maybe.
Twitter's where a lot of businesses go. What you're talking about, you'll find other groups like yourself on Twitter, Reddit.
Okay. I appreciate all suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, and I know an organization that puts people like you in touch with other people of like mind that have created other organizations similar. Not exact, but similar enough. So, some groups are like vegan and some aren't. Some want to have a community where everybody lives together in the same community, some don't. But like I said, I've come across quite a few of these connections, and I'll definitely collaborate with you so you're in touch with more of them. And I think this is the way we definitely have to go. I like a lot of this stuff. Yeah. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So what do you do in your peaceful, conscious country, borders a country like Russia, where they're not going to let you transform the culture? Like, they're going to actively repress any attempt to transform their culture.
I mean, you as a thinking nation, or as a thinking person, you've got to assess the risk and decide whether or not you can do it. And and that would be de-risk. And I'll say this. I recently, within the last year, I read a book. It was kind of a utopian book. It was about it was published in like '92, and there was a big downfall in 2028, and the anarchists, not the anarchists, but the authoritarians took over and controlled every part of the world, every part of the known world except San Francisco. San Francisco did their own thing, and they planted fruit trees everywhere, and took care of everybody, and they came up with this utopian life where nobody had to worry about anything, but it was just encased in San Francisco. And I really highly recommend the book. It's a wonderful read. But to your point, when the authoritarian government finally came for them, they chose to invite the soldiers to sit at their table. They took the really gutsy move. No, we're not going to fight you guys, and they prevailed. And it's really a really great novel. It's called The Fifth Sacred Thing, and it's written under the pen name Starhawk. And there's 3 novels in the series, and that's the first one. But I'd like to see it. I mean, I said in the talk, I'd like to see us decide to go from $800 billion to zero. I mean, why do we have to spend $800 billion? Wouldn't it make just as much sense to spend zero? You know, we can put our arms into armories. We can send our troops in there to pick them up if somebody comes for us. I mean, we could make that decision.
How do you think you get people to stop being driven by ego and power and greed?
It's a function of higher consciousness, right?
Because don't you think that, like, as long as there's a subset, doesn't really matter who, it could be just Putin, as long as there's people that are still driven by ego and greed and power, everyone else is kind of vulnerable to the situation.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about the United States is we would make such an impact if we went first. I mean, like I said, the social democracies of the Nordic countries have already gone first ipso facto, but they're not near as big as we are. And if we went in another way, it would. You'd have to think it would really influence a lot of people. Of course, you know, I was watching Ukraine coverage yesterday, and one of the reporters was making the point very well that, you know, you think you've got a bunch of crazy people that don't think Donald Trump lost the election. Well, imagine what the population in Russia is dealing with as far as their information about what's going on with Ukraine. I mean, you know, it's a tough one.
Usually what happens, war is what usually clears the cash register, and then the people that are left have to, you know, whatever country or region have to come up with something like you're talking about, you know, a sane way to go forward. But I think we're facing that right now. What we're seeing in Central Europe, you know, is and whether or not it will spread is the key. You know, if the whole world goes that way, then you have another world war. But I don't know. Don and I have a long history of discussing this. In fact, at Christmas Day, when you all called him a Pollyanna, he didn't like that. He didn't like that very much. But it's just everything that you talk about is so complicated, and you know, so complicated.
Or simple.
Well, the simple part.
Is everything connected or is everything separate? I mean, that's the question.
Everything is connected, but that's also true in the negative. I mean, the revolutions of the 20th century are the background of what we're seeing in in Ukraine now. I mean, the Ukrainians accepted and became aligned with Hitler.
Thanks, Johnny.
Because the Russians had starved 3 or 4 million of their people to death. So, I mean, that's all connected. And what you're talking about the connections that you're talking about are very abstruse to the average person, I think. But there has to be something that teaches that lesson to the masses of people. Something that, what would it be? I have no idea. You know.
Yeah, I had it in my notes, but I didn't say it tonight. The way that the Nordic countries were able to successfully establish their social democracies that are so successful is 100 years ago they transformed their educational system.
Right.
And they began providing every person in their country with the same high quality education,
Right.
whether they were in the city or whether they were in the country or whether
we
they
did
were
the same
rich or
thing
whether they
100
were
years.
poor. And then they started working on emotional well-being.
Right.
And the result of all that was a population with a higher consciousness.
Right.
And the
Well,
result of that
150
was a
years old,
population that
100
wanted to establish a social democracy that took care of everybody.
150 years ago, we were on board with educating that's how we got to be what we are today. We educated the common people in this country. You know? And when I was a kid, all that was still operative. And I can still sing you all the patriotic songs and hymns and everything from grade school.
Yeah.
But
But
it also goes back to like when I was a kid, it was still that way too. You know, I read this article that talks about how like 30 years ago ish, kind of what you were saying about like around 94ish things switched. That like when I grew up, everybody lived kind of in the same house.
Yeah.
Everybody went to the same kind of schools.
Same level of
Everybody
economic-
drove a
Everybody had
Buick.
dinner at
Everybody had a dinner.
The family dinner at like
And-
5, 6 o'clock.
And actually, you were eating
Better
the
be home
same
for
food.
dinner.
You know,
Yeah, actually, yes.
actually, like everyone kind of
Yeah.
ate the same
if
food.
there was a television program you were interested in, you had to be sitting down in front of it when it came on.
There was
Yeah,
no-
but the
But it's the
difference
only
was-
damn
the
good
difference-
thing on for that whole week.
That's true.
Well, there
The
was no
difference
television
of
when I was a
today
kid.
is that your neighbor lives in a house that is literally 20x your house. Their
Yeah.
cars are like, there's such a wide variety.
Yeah.
We all don't eat the same thing anymore, right? And so people are comparing themselves to each other like never before in history. And people are striving for this thing that someone else has like never before in history, because America used to be such a more even playing field, I guess. Like everyone was kind
Well,
of
we
more,
all got the same propaganda. We don't anymore. Now we all live in our own little microcosm of whatever news feeds that we've picked out on social media or wherever.
yeah, but there's such a wide income disparity is what I mean now, that it didn't used to happen like before Reagan era, right? Like we all kind of like, people had the same kind of jobs, people
There are
did
more
the same kind
middle
of things.
class than there are today. yeah.
Right. And so now there's this huge gap that's driving a lot of resentment and a lot of violence and a
Well,
lot
Texas is
Sure.
the model for that, because
of, yep,
oil, you know, people, that had oil wells in their property, became the model for the rest of, you see Giant, so there's a wonderful scene in there when the guy's talking to Elizabeth Taylor, and he says, well, we just, we got our wells doing 22 million, and she says, a year? He said, no, a month. I mean, everybody in Texas was aware of all that, you know?
yeah.
Texas is sort of one of the models.
I
of the
remember
world.
that scene very well.
Right.
Incredible scene, that's right.
Anyway, your effort is valiant, Don. I applaud
We
you.
can do it. It's doable.
Well,
I mean, all we can do is try. I mean, there's no other way to go. I mean, if we don't make it, then we're sunk.
Yeah, I think there are more people than you maybe realize that are aware
I mean,
of
yeah,
what you're talking about.
I'm aware of that. There's a book that I wrote about in Soft Landing called The Cultural Creatives, where a couple of sociologists sent out polls and studied the various categories of people from the standpoint of where they the cultural creatives are the ones that would be with us, that would be ready to shift the culture.
Right.
And they said in year 2000 there was 50 million in the United States.
Yeah.
And 200 million worldwide. And the reason that everybody's unaware of that is that we just don't connect to the people that want to say everything is connected.
Yeah.
But I think that's right, and I think, you know, the discovering that difference between the world of Ishmael from 30 years ago and the world of today, where everybody's so much more ready to accept the reality of connectedness, really gave me a nice little feeling today. I mean, I was always aware that, you know, progressive issues prevail in the end, but, you know, that's a good example. We're making progress.
I was thinking about you when I was bathing today, because I was reading an article. There's this guy that's been in Cuba in the what is it called, the Guantanamo Bay for like 20 years now, and his case came before the Supreme Court, and the judges went with the idea that having his public trial was bad for national security. Well, guess who was promoting that idea? The people that would have to admit that they were war criminals if it came to trial. It would become clear that they're war criminals. Bush, Pompeo, all of those, the guys that created the torture methods in the black sites all over the world. So there's always a pushback in relation to any kind of forward step. I have no idea what to do myself.
I think it's important to recognize that you talk about there's more of us than we think. Well, there's even some of us in Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a progressive caucus.
Yeah.
45 strong, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they're on board with this stuff.
Yeah.
They understand that corporations have stolen our government from us. Bernie and Elizabeth most definitely understand that.
Ocasio-Cortez.
Yep.
There are others too. Not as well known, not as dramatic as those, but
See, I think people can agree with the proposition that we're all connected and still be people with hang-ups who get triggered, who argue, who have completely different visions of politics and so forth. So I don't think just getting everyone to agree we're all connected means everyone's going to get along.
I assert that you've got to understand that everything is connected from the standpoint of you've got to understand where we are with our present culture, and how it is not connected. And if you understand those two things, then you're on the same page, I think. If you're able to analyze the flaws in our culture that are a result of the very basic cultural myth that says the world was made for man to conquer and rule, which fosters a false sense of separation, then you get it. I don't think there's going to be that much disparity. But yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at it from the connected side, I could see that. That makes sense?
Yeah, but I mean, don't you think people are always going to have their emotions and their triggers and their pathologies, even if they share an intellectual perspective?
Well, I work very hard to try and understand the various categories of people that are not ready to accept the truth of connectedness, and one of them is it just takes a certain level of consciousness, and if you're mired in emotional blockages from childhood traumas or whatever, and that's preventing you from achieving a higher state of consciousness, then you're trapped in lower state of consciousness where everything is anger and guilt and fear and worry, and you're not capable of wanting to take on saving the planet.
Yeah.
And
keep focused on those children to give them, the best in life.
Exactly. That was what I was about to say, Rob. Is that I'm a huge advocate of teaching emotional intelligence and emotional well-being in our grade schools. Give those children those tools when they're 6, 7, 8 years old. The ones that have suffered traumas that they're not able to deal with by understanding emotional intelligence are going to stick out like a sore thumb, and you'll be able to get them the help, when they're 6 and 7, 8 years old, instead of when they're 40 and alcoholics, or 35 and mass shooters.
I've taught twice in marginal schools, once in Hope, Arkansas, and once in Welder down here, and both of those places were paradigmatic in relation to how poor people have to get along in the world, and I can guarantee you that there would not be 3 people out of 300 in that category that would understand a word that you said tonight. It's just not part of their reality, you know. Their struggle is so dramatic and so all-encompassing just to have food to eat, you know. And the food that they have to eat is not.
Let's get them some food to eat, man. Let's get them some food to eat. Let's get them a place to go to the bathroom. Let's
It's
get
not
them
a dollar mark.
You know.
Supposedly the statistics are that like so many people just buy their grocery at dollar mark. That blows my mind.
I didn't even know they sold groceries.
Yeah, they do.
They do, yeah. They're not really groceries.
Only the most processed. Only the most processed
Try to be
junk food that you can find on planet Earth.
plus not enough, so ancient from their use by date that they couldn't be sold in another store.
Oh, but one thing that you didn't mention about the food and locking it up and everything. Well, half the food that we grow in this country doesn't get out of the fields because it doesn't look right. And then another half of it, when it gets into the grocery stores, is thrown away on sell-by dates. So we waste 3/4 of our productivity in making it look good for the middle class. It has to look right.
Well, it's like 80%
But-
of our agriculture is for feeding cattle.
Yep, he said, mention that.
I would say that that's a great example though of progress we're making. Is that now they're starting to pass laws that grocery stores can't throw away food.
Yeah, in France, it's illegal.
But they're starting here, you know, like they're in San Francisco. Like it's taking hold in the
Yeah.
US where like in
Well-
10 years it'll probably be just like the restaurant situation here.
You know,
now like
Fresh
restaurants in
Plus,
Austin.
you know Fresh Plus on 43rd Street? Well, I've been going to that store for 40 years, and it's changed ownership 3 times, changed names 3 times. And it just recently changed owners, and I was talking to the woman that was buying it, and I thought she was pretty, a little bit high, pretty high consciousness, you know. I said, well, why don't you have bins where you sell the seconds, you know? Don't throw it all away. If it's got a spot on it, just, you know, let somebody buy it with a spot on it, you know? And a lot of times those things taste better too, those kinds of those foods that are.
Ugly produce.
More right.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. I mean,
I'm down.
it's
I'm down for ugly
absolutely true.
produce.
I have a theory that a tomato that's got a spot on it, if it's healed and everything, dried up, it tastes better. Cause it's had to
Yes.
struggle.
Spotty's groceries.
It's also healthier. There's a Harvard doctor that is the main guy in anti-aging these days, and his most recent book talks about how part of the reason they think Italians and Japanese are living so long is that not only are they eating things that are grown on the side of the road and from the sea, but those things don't have the pesticides, don't have the
Yeah,
genetic
right.
modification. So when they're fighting the elements, the anti-aging molecules that the plant is using also work for us. And so that's when he eats, he tries to buy the most organic, sometimes bruised, sometimes regrown, caterpillar eaten, whatever it is.
Yeah, I tell you, I saw this thing. I'm a big TV. I watch all the TV.
Imperishable. Like if the bugs don't eat it,
Right.
you better not eat it either.
That's exactly it.
It's the opposite of McDonald's. slogan.
Yeah, right. I have a friend who's a environmental hydrologist, and he was like at a landfill, like drilling down, and he picked out a piece of a hot dog that was approximately 20 years old down in the landfill, and he tested it, and it was still okay to eat.
Well, the heat, sometimes the heat in the landfills will preserve things too, you know.
Heat, really? Oh yeah.
You guys talking about agriculture, there's something that, as speaking of things that make you feel more hopeful and good, when my research into the piece I wrote on food and agriculture familiarized me with regenerative agriculture. It's happening, and it's so positive. It can have such a big impact on climate change and healthy food.
I mean, using using waste food.
We have learned that our method of plowing up our fields and planting a monocrop and fertilizing it with potassium and nitrogen is destroying the ecological
And-
system that
and the
exists
till.
under our soil.
There is a whole no-till
And,
movement going on now too.
If we hadn't killed that ecological system that was underneath our soil, we wouldn't need the fertilizers. And the thing about it is, if we are able to, regenerative agriculture can happen in a dead soil. Within 2 years, you've got a whole new culture of organisms that are thriving, with the right proper care. And then you're sequestering carbon in the soil instead of up in the atmosphere where it's causing our global warming.
But that's,
So
I'm from the
it's
backwoods.
really positive.
I'm from the backwoods of Arkansas, as you know, and I watched in my lifetime the land that was very fertile and supported this huge community, that rural community that I'm from in Arkansas, disappear. All that's there now is pulpwood forests. You go there and it's full of these trees, and they're all bunched together so close together.
Planted in
There's sunlight
rows.
gets down in
Yeah.
them. And it's very sad for me to have seen that in my lifetime, to see it all. But there's not a stick of furniture, not a house left of that little part of Arkansas that I was born in.
In the Bay Area, my mom would tell me when she was a little girl, the starlings would fly around, and there were so many they'd blot out the sun and actually change the temperature slightly. In Centerville, right next to San Francisco.
Sometimes there's starlings at HEB in the parking lot. Will make you believe too.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Good night, y'all.
You.
Good night. I'm sorry, Don, I got lost in my, you had to come get me.
I did. I sat down at his table, I said, hey, you coming to Don's talk? He said, yeah.
I lost track of what time. I was reading about Jackie Onassis' mother.
Oh.